My name's Steve Bowbrick, and I'm one of the people behind Speechification and also sister site Watchification, which feature radio and television that we love in blog form.
Excellent. And so where did the idea come from in the first place?
The idea emerged from conversations that Russell Davies and I had, because we realised as long-time bloggers, looking at each other's stuff, we're both real Radio 4 junkies, and we were the kind of people who had it on all the time in the background when we were working at home or whatever, and as freelancers we had the time, the free headspace to just absorb the stuff all the time. So I started to Twitter what I'm listening to right now. I called it Listen with Bowbrick, LWB. And quite, in the Twitter's sort of universe, I had quite a lot of people tuning in, and I would just send them out a link to a real media stream for a show that I liked or was listening to right then, and that was quite popular. And then Russell suggested at one time, well, what you should do with those is do a blog. And he said, look, I've been linking to radio programs for years, you've been doing it, let's put our archives together and start to build a website around it. So we put up Speechification.com. It was nearly Speechify, but you can't get the domain name, so we wound up stuck with Speechification, which sort of works.
Great, yeah.
And I guess it must be about 9 months or so since we put it up. I can't even remember. We've wound up with 6 people contributing all together. The critical third contributor after me and Russell was Rue Reynolds, who's, we call him Chief Engineer. He's very senior, very brainy techie at IBM, where he's they call him a metaverse evangelist. So he's Second Life and all that kind of stuff. And he's very clever on the tech side, so he can implement the ideas that we come up with as we go along. And then we've got further contributors. Dan Hill in Australia, so he chips in the Australian stuff.
He's ex-BBC, isn't he?
He was at BBC in London for some years, and he's a very experienced information architect in his own right. But we don't make use of that. We just hoover up what he listens to on Australian radio. He's just spent quite a while working with the Monocle. What's his name? Tyler Brule's
wallpaper guy.
Post wallpaper, big fat slice of loveliness. We're working on that. But we've also got Bobby Johnson, who works at The Guardian, and we've got James Bridle, who's a very interesting character in his own right. So we've got 6 contributors altogether, which seems to be about the right number. We could probably do with a couple more, so that there's always something new there, every day or every other day. And most people, we reckon, listen to it on the podcast, which is interesting. About 500 people subscribe to the podcast at the moment. It's only a little thing, really. And then some other unknown number are currently reading the entries on the website and perhaps also listening to the shows there, because you can just click play. The deal is we're just playing with this idea of curating content. Obviously in this case radio, and at Watchification is television. With Speechification, we do the slightly cheeky thing of nicking the MP3s from the beam. So we don't just listen to the programs or link to streams, we actually grab an MP3 and we put that up and string them together as a podcast. So that means that people can actually get hold of the MP3 and keep them. But with Watchification, which is our television-based product, what we do is we embed videos from the iPlayer. So if you've looked at the iPlayer, you can see obviously everything that went out on the BBC's television services, all of them, the last 7 days. With a few small exceptions, but that's essentially it. And what we do is a a large group of contributors, there are about 15 of us now, just prowl the television schedule, find things that we thought were great or interesting, and feature them in much the same way we do at Speechification, only on the Watchification site. Because you can embed those videos, people can actually watch the video right there at Watchification, and that's quite exciting because it's a very different kind of behaviour, obviously, from consuming a podcast on the way to work or on a bike or whatever. So we're learning something quite different. We're learning about how you curate embedded media, and it's a fascinating experiment. Obviously, at the moment, there's a limit to what you can embed. You can only embed at the moment content from the BBC's iPlayer. That's lots of stuff in its own right. But also stuff from YouTube and Google Video, and 2 or 3 other big sources actually permit you to grab a bit of code and embed the show itself in your website, and that's nice. But obviously what it does mean is that we have to exclude completely all the other major UK broadcasters, in fact broadcasters from anywhere, because most of them don't permit embedding. They don't want you to grab a video and embed it in another website. And they're doing this typically because they're commercial people and their video is wrapped in advertising. So their concern is that somebody might embed a video and wrap it in another layer of advertising, perhaps inappropriate advertising that their advertisers disapproved of, that kind of thing. So they're very edgy about whether they can actually get away with that or not. So you won't see embedding, for instance, on the Channel 4's catch-up service, which is very similar to iPlayer. It lets you watch all the shows they've put out in the last 7 days. Can't embed those. Can't do it with ITV.com's video. Can't do it with 5 or any of the other UK broadcasters. This is a major issue. I think this is one of our big points of learning. We really learned a lot from the fact that you can't do that.
Okay, then what do you think those companies are missing out on?
Well, it's a really good question, because we like everybody, early on, I suppose we were animated by issues of minority platforms. We, like the BBC and others, we were worried about whether these services should be available for people using Linux and Macs, for instance, and we thought that was a big deal. We thought that there was a kind of public service obligation to reach all the minority platforms. And when Ashley Highfield, shortly before he left the BBC, the head of Things Internet at the BBC, developed a bit of an obsession with Linux and whether they could provide the iPlayer for Linux users and so on. He was reflecting that obsession with these minority platforms. But actually, what we all should have been thinking about was not whether or not you could get the iPlayer on Linux, but whether or not you could embed the iPlayer video. Because it turns out that's much more important. Because if you can permit people to grab your videos off your website and embed them in another website, a fan site, a news and reviews website, any kind of website, could even be a website critical of the BBC or other. If you let people embed, you promote an ecosystem. You promote the emergence of a system around what you create, and it's potentially much more exciting. Suddenly you start to see the potential for new products and services that wrap around, for instance, BBC, Channel 4, ITV content. And while the commercial broadcasters don't permit embedding, they can't participate in that. They can't influence it, and they can't drive the UK telly ecosystem. And I think that's something they're going to have to deal with.